Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm excited to bring you a review for the new Marvel Legends Bonebreaker Build-A-Figure wave, Sabretooth. Now, this particular Sabretooth figure represents the character in some of his earliest appearances. As such, he's not the big, bulky monster that we're used to in this day and age. I mean, he's tall. He's a very tall guy, but he doesn't have that heft to him that, modern Sabretooth does. So it's a really interesting way to get a very different take on the character, who has had a number of toys here in recent years, so this is going to be one of the most unique amongst them. That being said, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at Sabretooth's packaging, then we're going to open it up, we get a quick look at his Build-A-Figure pieces, and then we'll see Sabretooth himself, we'll check out his posability. I don't believe he has any of his own accessories, so we'll just really be focusing on the figure itself. Naturally, we're doing plenty of group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Sabretooth comes in your standard Marvel Legends packaging. You get your Bonebreaker callout up here, you get the X-Men logo on top, and then you get the iconic 90s X-Men logo right there. You get his name, Sabretooth, and then we get to see the figure itself on the right side, and he is a very, very tall, albeit lanky version of Sabretooth. We also get, looks like, 3 different Build-A-Figure pieces here to help build Bonebreaker. Go ahead and turn this to the side, and we get some really nice artwork of Sabretooth. I really love the colors and the shading and stuff that they've done for this. Turn to the back, you get the same artwork but reversed, which is becoming a trend lately. Kind of lazy, guys. I liked it when there was 2 different bits of artwork here. We get his name right here, and then we get some flavor text that reads, "With keen senses, a mutant healing factor, and zero moral restraint, Sabretooth is a dark reflection of his arch nemesis, the mutant hero Wolverine." So fitting that they both come in this wave together. You can have them, fight it out. Now I'm noticing that Sabretooth is against a snowy backdrop here, and I can only guess this is actually in reference to his very first comic appearance, which you would think would be an X-Men comic, right? But no, he actually first appeared in an Iron Fist comic of all places, and he battled Iron Fist in this snowy mountainous environment. So really interesting callback to that, at least I'm assuming that's what it is. Though they have made some slight changes to his design. You can see he's actually got fingerless gloves now, whereas in the old comic he actually had full finger gloves. And on the toy, he really took some liberties with his face to really just ugly him up and make him look like a real beast. So he's not completely comic book accurate. He's got that signature Marvel Legends artistic flair where they, want to make him a little more intimidating looking, a little cooler looking than he may have appeared in a very old, very flat colored comic book. And that's okay. I don't mind them taking that base design and just dialing up the realism a little bit, just to give you a character that, looks like they can exist in the real world. All right, down here, we get a render of Bonebreaker, and then we get our cross-sells for this wave. We get Wolverine, Siren, Havoc, Vulcan, Maggot, Darwin, and then lastly, Sabretooth. I like how it's a bunch of 2-syllable names bookended by 3-syllable names. I wonder if they planned it out that way. So as you can see, this is a very X-Men-centric wave, though it doesn't represent any particular story arc or era. The character designs are kind of all over the place. So think of it as like a Generations or Best Of type wave for these guys. All right, so that's the packaging. As always, very cool. I mean, anything with X-Men styling is going to be extra cool because X-Men is awesome. But now it's time to go ahead and open it up. Now we get old Victor Creed out of the packaging. And first, let's take a look at his bath pieces. So this cylindrical piece right here is the part that Bonebreaker's torso actually plugs into, that allows him to integrate with the tank treads there. And it's very detailed, very cool. And it's a static piece by itself, but it has a part right here that allows it to turn. And yeah, I mean, it's got, these cool panels and tubes and stuff and lights. Very nice little piece. Then we get what looks like a big old car engine, basically. You can even see the pulleys and belt here. You get the chambers, you get these big old exhaust pipes on the back, which will go behind Bonebreaker's body. And now this part, I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure what it is. You can't see it on any of the pictures or anything. I'm guessing it's some sort of a hatch or cover or something, but I'm going to have to kind of play around with my bath and figure out where this thing's supposed to go. It's a pretty simple piece, but the 3 of them together make for a fair amount of plastic and, paint deco and all that, so I'm pretty satisfied with that. Then we get to see Sabretooth himself. Like I said, he's a pretty big boy, definitely taller than your average male character. He's got the ball joint and hinge combo on the neck. He has this little fur collar, which is actually a separate piece. Can be removed because it just plugs into the hole on his back. So if you want to customize and have some fun with that, you can. He's got universal shoulders that are kind of hard to lift up, but they'll go. Got a bicep swivel, double elbow bend, and universal wrists. He's also got an ab crunch, a waist swivel, universal hips that they don't get much outward motion at all, but they have really good forward motion, which is nice. We got the thigh swivel, got your double knee bend here, and then you get your ankle rock and rotation. So quite a bit of posability going on. Pretty much your average amount here for a male character. And he looks good. You know, he's got a lot of really nice sculpted detailing that looks better when he's not falling over. So yeah, we can see obviously the face and hair very well sculpted, lots of fine lines and paint apps. His collar piece is also very nice. Now most of his body, I believe, is just kind of a generic, you know, large character buck. But you get his forearms, which I think are unique to him with their fur patternings. The hands probably are too. And then the lower legs and feet are probably new for this mold. So quite a bit of nice tooling going on here. And, you know, he looks good. He poses well. He's definitely got a presence, even if he's not nearly as big as, you know, some other Sabretooths out there. But if you ever wanted his old classic, I don't know what you call it. Is it Golden Age, maybe, of comics? I'm not sure the year he came out, but you can tell that it was a fairly long time ago, just given the art on the cover for that issue. So yeah, I like him. He takes some getting used to because most people do not recognize this form for Sabretooth. They expect him to be a much more heavily built character. And this guy is admittedly kind of lanky, but he's not lacking in muscle. I mean, you can see the definition all over him, and he's still a very big, powerful character. So instead of being something like a large bear-like character, he's more of a deranged jackal. Now here's a quick comparison with a figure that I have not yet completed the review for, but I'd like to get him out here for reference purposes. So this is the Age of Apocalypse Sabretooth. So same character, just in a different timeline. And you can see the size difference between these two is pretty massive, both in height and just musculature. And this is probably closer to what most people think of when they think of Sabretooth, at least as far as his build. Because he is, you know, in modern times depicted as a very large character. So it just shows that when striving for, you know, accuracy when it comes to things like scale and all that, in a Marvel Legends line, it's almost kind of a pointless pursuit because these toys are based on the comics, and the comics themselves are never consistent with how a character is supposed to look. Whether it's, you know, the artist or just the general direction that Marvel Comics wants to take things, you know, you're never going to get like that perfect consistency across the board, and you're going to get weird things like this where a character inexplicably changes in build and height. Even their facial features are pretty much nothing alike. So, you know, that's just one thing you kind of have to accept, that if you want to be a completionist and collect all these different figures, you're going to have situations like this where it's kind of hard to imagine they're even the same guy. But they're both solid Sabretooth toys in their own right. They just depict very different interpretations of Sabretooth. You get your deranged wild man, and then you get the more tempered Sabretooth of that alternate timeline, who's more of an anti-hero than a villain. And I think they both have their place in a collection, as long as you're somebody who doesn't mind the inconsistencies that stem from the comics themselves. And now here's a fun little group shot with the recently released animated series Wolverine. Now unfortunately the aesthetic doesn't match up too well between these guys because this Wolverine is cel-shaded, so he's a little more cartoony looking than this toy. But, you know, the mold is still good, and you can get your classic, like, Jim Lee era Wolverine against the OG version of Sabretooth. And honestly, regardless of which version of these characters you have, this is always just a classic battle because these two are just like eternal enemies. So if you have a Wolverine toy, you can get some really, really good shots of Sabretooth battling out with your Logan. And this completes our look at the latest iteration of Marvel Legends' take on Sabretooth. I personally really like this figure. I think for what it is, it's very good. It's got a great amount of new sculpting. It's got awesome paint wash and sculpted detail and all that. It may not be everybody's cup of tea because, again, this isn't, you know, the Sabretooth that most people are used to. You have to go back pretty far to really resurrect this old design. But if you are somebody that doesn't mind collecting, you know, different versions of characters, right? Because these characters, their designs change and evolve over time. like constantly. If you don't mind having just another version of Sabretooth in your collection, or if you don't have any Sabretooth and you just need one, I think this one fits the bill well enough, right? He's got the tusks and the teeth, he's got the big old claws, he's got the classic orange outfit, you know, some version of it anyway. He's got the fur lining, right? So it is Sabretooth through and through. It's just a little smaller and a little different looking compared to what most people expect. So it's a good toy. It may not be for everyone, especially if you already have a different version of this guy, but you won't feel robbed if you pick him up. He's easily worth the price point, especially with all the Build-A-Figure pieces he comes with, and I personally enjoy having him in my collection. Of course, that is just how I feel about this toy, so now I want to know what you all think of Sabretooth. Is this a figure that you're eager to pick up? Is he one of the highlights of the waves, or maybe one of the duds of the wave? Do you not like this design? Maybe you prefer, you know, the Jim Lee era one, or maybe even the Age of Apocalypse Sabretooth. Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the brand new Marvel Legends Bonebreaker Build-A-Figure Wave Sabretooth. And with all that said, I will see you next time.